Welcome back to the Triathlon Training Explained show, powered by Training Peaks. And this week, we're back in the pool at Team Bath to tackle a question we hear time and time again. What is threshold swimming and what is your threshold pace? See, if you want to increase your race pace in the swim, then it's essential that you improve your lactate threshold. This is basically the point at which you start to accumulate lactate in your bloodstream at a quicker rate than it can be removed. So basically slowing you down. So by knowing the pace of your lactate threshold, you can start tailoring your sessions to basically bump that pace up. It sounds complicated, it sounds scary, but it really isn't. So today, I'm going to be explaining it for you. Okay, so when we're trying to improve our swimming, we tend to do a couple of things. We jump in the swimming pool and we swim up and down steadily and aerobically to improve our fitness. The other thing we do is we try to improve our technique. So by improving our technique, we can be more efficient through the water. Both of those are great, they're fantastic, and you should continue to do those. But have you thought about doing specific sessions designed to improve your threshold swim pace? Now, if you are new to swimming, then threshold sessions may not be for you right now, but if you have been swimming for some time and you swim quite regularly, then they could really help you. So let me run you through a threshold session. Okay, so I used to do a relatively straightforward session I'm going to run you through here. It's part of my Threlfall's Turbo Threshold Triathlon Training, also known as T.T.T.T.T. And the main set for that is 2100s, and I used to do this off about a 1:20 turnaround, give or take. So you're going for a relatively short turnaround, something around 7 to 12 seconds. And yeah, it does start to bite after a while. The common mistake I would see on a session like this is athletes going far too hard from the start, so they actually end up failing and not making the turnaround later on in the session. The other thing I'd see is athletes taking far too easy a turnaround, so they're actually getting a lot of rest, and it means that, yeah, they can swim at a faster pace above their threshold. The problem here is, yeah, you're not swimming at a threshold pace, you're actually swimming at an anaerobic pace, which is handy to a degree for triathlon and open water swimming, but given the length of the swims, it isn't quite as relevant. So I think I made it pretty clear by now. Yeah, you need to know your threshold pace. So for this, I'm going to jump in the pool. Okay, so threshold generally refers to the best pace or effort we can sustain for 60 minutes. But firstly, who really fancies doing a 60-minute time trial to find out that pace? Certainly not me, and also we're not all swimming for 60 minutes in a triathlon, so that's where critical swim speed or CSS comes in. So this works out our best pace that we can maintain for 1500 meters and also works as a good close approximation of our lactate threshold pace, and in my experience it's pretty bang on. In fact, Paul Newsome of Swim Smooth created CSS, and it's now used by countless pros and national teams. So for this, you need to do a 400 meter time trial, take a short break, and then do a 200 meter time trial, which sounds a heck of a lot better than doing a 60-minute time trial, if you ask me. So you need to arrive feeling rested and ready to perform this test as best as possible and really nail it, so then the results are valid and useful for your training. You want to do both of the tests from a push start and do the 400 meter before the 200, as it is less likely to affect the 200 than it is the other way around. And make sure you take a really good recovery between both of the reps with a little bit of easy swimming. Right, get.
Whoa, where you going, mate?
Oh, have I got to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, so first rep, 400 meters. Here I go. Okay, next one, 200 meter time trial. Here we go. Right, that's both time trials done. So for the 400, I went 4:36, and for the 200, I went 2:12. So now I just need to work out my threshold and CSS pace. For that, I'm going to head back to the GTN set, get changed. Right, now that we've done the test, it's time to work out our critical swim speed. And for that, we need to put our times through a little calculation. And I'm going to try and do my best to explain this now. So our CSS calculation is here. So we've got on this side our distances, and this side our times. So we're going to subtract 200 from 400, giving us 200 obviously. And then on this side, we're going to convert our times to seconds. So we're going to subtract our 200 meter time from our 400 meter time and divide the two. I'm going to use my own as an example here. So on this side, I converted my swim splits to seconds. So I've got 261.6, and I'm going to subtract 127.2 into that. I'm going to divide 200 by that value. And that gives me a value of 1.49, and that is in meters per second. And what that means is that I'm traveling at 1 meter and 49 centimeters per second. That's cool, still not very useful at this point, so we need to convert that a little bit further. So I've done that here. That gives me a time of 1 minute and 12 seconds per 100 meters. And that is my CSS, my critical swim speed pace. So that's really cool. I enjoyed doing the math there, but I do understand that's a bit complicated. So you can, of course, just go online. You can go onto the Swim Smooth website and use their online calculator. But where's the fun in that? I enjoyed that anyway. It is worth noting that these calculators do throw out some interesting numbers sometimes, which do throw people. So let me run you through a couple of those scenarios. Right, for this, we're going to use this graph here. So we've got speed up the side and then distance along the bottom. So let's bring in swimmer number one. They're a bit of a speed demon. You can see that over there, 50 meters. They're practically off the chart in terms of speed. 200 meters, also very good. Then we start to see a considerable drop off going into the 400 and so on. Now let's bring in swimmer number two. Not as fast as the speed demon over the shorter distances, over the 50, the 200, but then the 400, interestingly, they have a very similar 400 meter time to swimmer number one. And what we'd see there is that from 400 onwards, they're possibly better over the longer distances, which, I mean, does throw people. You'd probably, having swum with swimmer number one, you would have said that they are the better swimmer, they're going to win in a race. So this can naturally cause a bit of a stir in your club sessions. In fact, let's make this a little bit more relatable. And Alistair Brownlee did a really good explanation of this in the past. So using this graph here, we've got speed up the side, and then we've got athlete A, athlete B, and then athlete C. Athlete A, as you can see, has got an incredible max speed. They are the speed demon. Athlete B, not so much, quite a big drop off. They don't have a good max speed. Athlete C, they sit somewhere in the middle, still a respectable max speed. So going by this graph right now, if you put these guys into a race, you probably think athlete A is going to come out on top. But what this graph doesn't take into account is their threshold pace, what they can sustain for something like 1500 meters. So let's take a look at athlete A and athlete B to start off with. Athlete A being a sprinter, we typically see with swimmers like this, they have a considerable drop off in their threshold pace. So there's quite a big gap between their max speed, their threshold pace. But athlete B, because they don't have such a high max speed, there is very little difference between their threshold pace and their max speed. And interestingly, possibly quite similar to athlete A's. So you put them in a 400 meter time trial, might come out with a very similar time as we saw on the graph before. And then we have athlete C, which is what the Brownies could consider themselves being. They have a good max speed, not as good as athlete A's, but still very respectable and very useful for those ITU mass start surges and just generally the high pace that those Brownies swim. But this is where it gets interesting, because they have a threshold pace so close to their max speed and actually so much higher that anything over something like 4 to 5 minutes, these guys are going to come flying through. So this is really interesting. This is basically what we're striving for by doing these threshold swims. We're trying to bump up that threshold pace and our max speed, of course. Clearly worked for the Brownies. Let's give it a go. So now you have your threshold or CSS pace. What do you do with it? Well, if you have a Training Peaks account, you can now input that new threshold pace into your account and it will calculate your training zones for swimming. So what this means is when you upload a swim session, when you're finished, it will actually calculate the intensity of that swim and give you a stress score. In terms of the sessions that you do to improve your threshold, well, the possibilities are endless and progressible. So I'm gonna use a few examples here. So my 2100 session earlier with a relatively short recovery of something like 7 to 15 seconds. And then you progress that to something like 10 200s with a 20-second recovery, so slightly longer. And then progress again to something like 5 400s with a 30-second recovery. And then again, progress it to something like 3 600s with a longer 40 to 45-second recovery. Now, obviously, you can shorten all those reps if you're not quite ready for a 2-kilometer main set. And of course, don't forget to do a good warm-up and warm down for this. Now, at this point, if your training is going well and you're managing to complete a threshold session each week or quite regularly, then you might start to see your threshold time dropping and improving, which is great. That is what it's all about. So it might be time to retest, and I'd normally suggest doing that every 4 to 8 weeks. But I do understand that that will mean sacrificing a session to do that, which you may not be happy with doing. So if you're confident that you've improved your CSS time by 1 to 2 seconds, just adjust your CSS time accordingly. And if you struggle with it, just revert back to your original. But I would suggest not adjusting it by too much at once without retesting to confirm and validate that. Now, I have covered a lot today on threshold swimming, and to be honest, I could keep going all day. So if you do have any questions, please drop them in the comment section below and I'll try and answer those. It is worth noting that I'm not suggesting cutting sprints and anaerobic swimming completely from your training program. They're still very beneficial in terms of applying power through the water and improving your max speed. All I'm suggesting is perhaps adjusting the way that you train, maybe shifting some of your anaerobic main sets to more CSS threshold swimming, so you're dropping the pace and reducing that recovery. Now, if you like the GTM videos, you want to make sure that you don't miss any more of them, just click on the globe and subscribe. If you'd like to see more of our Triathlon Training Explained shows, just click up here. If you'd like to see 5 pro swim tips from no other than Lucy Charles, just click down here.